All right, it looks like we're back. Hey, this is Al from Transformational Gaming. Please comment, like, subscribe. And today, I want to talk to you guys about a little bit of the PS5 and my impressions of the dreadfully dry Mark Cerny. But less emphasis on Mark Cerny. First of all, Mark Cerny deserves all of our respect. Honestly, he's created and engineered and designed the PS4, and that's one of the best selling consoles of all times. And so the fact that Sony is in the position that they're in, I think he deserves a little bit of our respect. So let's throw a little respect on Mark Cerny's name and stay away from everybody because everybody's sick. No, I'm just joking. But anyway, let's get into it. So today, Mark Cerny spoke at the would-be developers conference, and he talked about the PS4 and the PS5 and the vision of the PS5, and contrast and compared loosely with the Xbox Series X, but mostly with the PS4. And honestly, I want to say a lot of things about it, but not necessarily about Mark Cerny. But I want to go over the few of the highlights of what was discussed at the developers conference. And one of the main things that Mark Cerny talked about was the SSD and his affinity for the SSD. And I have to join him in that. SSDs, you can argue, should have been more planned for the previous generation of consoles. I got an SSD in my PlayStation 4 Pro, and I had it in my PS4 as well. And there is stability using an SSD, but it doesn't utilize the speed because the PS4 assumes that you're going to be using a slow drive. So even though you got an SSD inside the PS4, it assumes that you're going to be using that slow drive. So unfortunately, you don't get a lot of games, but there are some games that present themselves in the PS4 Pro and allows you to upload and download. And there's not a lot of situations, and I don't want to go into all the situations because your mileage may vary, right? But for the most part, it was always my vision to have a SSD, whether it came with a typical traditional hard drive or not. I just believe that using the SSD is always protocol, no matter what device you're using. So you can argue that the consoles were about 10 years behind. Nevertheless, we're here. The next generation consoles will, in fact, have SSDs in them, and they are really, really fast. Now, the PS4, and I don't like giving a lot of numbers because I don't have it right in front of me, but just because I've been watching the presser all day, I just kind of got them in my brain, so I'm just going to spat them out. And forgive me if they're not totally accurate, but the SSD is going to have a capacity of 850 gigs, and the read-write speeds are going to be at 5.5 gigabytes per second. Oh no, I'm sorry. The the speed of the drive is going to be actually 5.5 gigahertz per second. I'm sorry. So, but yes, regardless, I think that's pretty impressive for this kind of console, or for consoles in general, because just being able to have that throughput is just something that will help future-proof the PS4, PS5, and I'm so used to saying PS4. But yeah, something that will future-proof the PS5, because honestly, and I haven't really gone through all of the specs yet, but the next thing we can talk about is the CPU. And the CPU, to be honest with you, is kind of a dinosaur at this point in time. I mean, you're talking about 3.5 gigahertz per second, and to be honest with you, that's kind of pokey. And the SSD read-write speed is actually faster than that. So you could argue, yeah, you may get rid of a bottleneck from the hard drive, but the CPU is still going to be a bottleneck. But I will say this is Zen 2, and even the situation with the gigahertz and the speed problem that the PS5 has, just because of Zen 2, and I do understand that the efficiencies is going to be there. They're probably going to have SMT implemented and all that other stuff. So, and we're not going to get super technical, but yeah, 3.5 is good, I guess, for what they're doing because of the efficiency and the generation that the processor is in. So I thought that was somewhat impressive, but I hate talking about this next thing, but the GPU. And I'm not giving my opinion right now, but I just want to lay out the facts as how they are. And the GPU is a 10.28 better, I guess, you can say 10.3 teraflops. I hate saying that word, teraflops. And I guess at this point, I don't know what else to say. I've said it in countless videos. You just go through my catalog of videos. I mean, you'll see me talking about the PS5. I said, hey, at one point I said, hey, I'm looking at 8, but it could be 10 and it could be 12, but it definitely won't be 13, 14, and 15. And I got that right, man. And a lot of people, that's a YouTuber that I have in mind right now. He's unsubscribed and blocked me from his Twitter. And if I go on there as Transformational Gaming, he would not respond to me. And there's another one that just totally blocked me. So, and I don't care. But I think the real issue is that they really, and not just them, the vast majority of Twitter users really wanted that to be 14 and 16 and 17 T-flops. And, even though I know I kind of speak out into the void, but, I try to tell everybody who can hear, man. Dude, don't go by T-flops. Mark Cerny said it. I might just play that every time I make a video. I might just put that at the beginning. Don't go by T-flops. T-flops is the most asinine thing you can go by, but Microsoft uses it. Let me stop, because I said I was going to give the facts on this part. So anyway, 10.28 T-flops is what the GPU is for the PS4. Sorry, I keep saying PS4. PS5 altogether, PS5. So the PS5 is going to deliver 10, and there's other aspects of the systems that's kind of impressive. Of course, it's going to do ray tracing. I am so glad that Sony has the same outlook and the same attitude that I do about ray tracing. I think ray tracing is, I mean, maybe it will be. Look, I'm gonna be honest with you. Since I've made my video about ray tracing, I have seen some impressive, I don't know, demos that could be reality in the future, especially with the next generation consoles. I mean, just having shadows for every object and have it displayed clearly and having it sharp and being able to realistically shine the light off of objects within the game does add a certain amount of realism to the game. And I guess until you really see that, but the thing about it is that I made the mistake of going by Digital Foundry and what they're looking at like Minecraft. Like, to me, that's not impressive at all. Like, and I forgot, there's a few other games that they looked at, but all the games on Digital Foundry, like, to me, that ray tracing wasn't impressive at all. But some of the conceptual videos that I've been seeing from AMD and different other developers, I thought, hey, if you can get up to that, then that is when I'll start really jumping on the bandwagon about ray tracing. So yeah, it has ray tracing. Another impressive thing about the GPU is that, which I always thought you should go by this, but the CUs are being talked about nowadays. and so I'm glad about that. And I'm happy about that, instead of making all these computational things with T-flops. But yeah, the CU speeds are over what is it, 2 yeah, I think it's 2 point something gigahertz per second. So I think that's impressive, given the fact that their architecture is a vertical architecture, and without going into what all that means, it basically means that they concentrate more on speed than they do the amount of CUs and the amount of shaders. Again, those type of silicone is cheap comparatively to what really matters, and that what matters is building the game. I mean, so you got a bunch of CUs, and like Mark Cerny was saying, you can't even use all of them, and you got to have a good API to utilize them correctly. Do you guys? I haven't heard anything about the DX API being built better, or have updates that makes that a lot more easier to develop with. Because from what I've been hearing, you can go to Wikipedia. They said the API is difficult to develop with. So and even though they're using DX for all of their bells and whistles to utilize those CUs and those shaders, I mean, really, a lot of people still use OpenGL, man. To be totally honest with you, a lot of developers still use, but you can use multiple APIs, just like you can in web development. You can use multiple, because all the API does is just provide a pipeline. But the thing is, the pipeline for computer engineering and software development, as it applies to gaming, those are supposed to help you use supposed to provide your engine to use some of the or all of the components within the GPU. So it's a sad situation, and it's the reason why a lot of the Xbox One X games, I mean, there's some games that don't run better on the Xbox One X, because the simple fact of the matter is that the API is so difficult to manage. So you trying to have your API and you stacking it on top of your engine, and your engine is not responding because the API is all screwed up. So, and so I'm not gonna get too technical, but just understand that there's a stack to all of this to get to the actual components. And I want to make a video talking about Microsoft and their failures, man, because I mean, this stuff like that is inexcusable, and I hope that they build a better OS and just a better menu for their for their consoles, because it's just their OS menus is just terrible, man. So, but that's neither here nor there. The good thing is Vulkan is pretty nice. It has its struggles, but Vulkan is basically a Linux API. So that's what Sony uses, and from what I understand, the API is able to be utilized more efficiently is because they don't have that many CUs. It's not a bunch of marketing buzz going on with the GPU. So the Vulkan API is easier to manage. So, and admittedly, all APIs are terrible, but man, it's Microsoft's. I heard DX was a beast. I heard it's just junk. To be honest with you, that's what I've been hearing. But anyway, back to PS5. So yeah, so those are really all of the components, really, for the PS5 that I want to talk about. Now I want to give my opinion about some of the moves that Sony's been making and things like that. I think I'm gonna start off with the bad, and I think the only really bad move Sony did was, well, there's a couple of bad moves, but the most, I don't know, punitive move that they did that was bad was having Mark Cerny out there, man. Look, Mark Cerny is a really good guy. He should do kind of like ad hoc interviews or one-off interviews or whatever you want to call them. He should focus on that type of media instead of doing a presentation, man. That's not his gig, man. I mean, that's just not him. He's really tough to listen to because he got this kind of perky voice, man, and it's just, he just seemed like a guy, man, that you don't want to trot out there. He's the brains behind the operation. You don't want to put your brains out there. You want him behind the curtain developing. And, bringing Mark Cerny out there, I just think it's just a mistake, to be totally honest with you. But that's my opinion. A lot of people like Mark Cerny. I like Mark Cerny, to be totally honest with you, but having him speak is like, I wouldn't have myself speak at a developers conference that is open to the public. He needs to be behind the scenes talking to the developers like he is. But I will say this, Mark Cerny is a resource. But that's another topic that I want to cover. But yeah, Mark Cerny is a real resource. He does deserve our respect. So yeah, and another egregious thing is, if you're gonna do anything public from here on out, Sony, bring out the console. Come out, design the thing. I thought this, whatever this is, he's looking over, looked like a laptop now, but I thought this was the PS5. I was like, oh, okay, they got the PS5. It doesn't say anything on it, but I think this is just that's one of their symbols for their laptops, and I'm thinking that that's what they was doing. They was in front of a laptop, so I don't think that's the PS5. Matter of fact, I'm quite certain that it's not the PS5. That being said, man, bring it down to PS5, man. We're just really tired of all the symbolism, and you're supposed to be coming out with this year. Either tell us you're gonna delay it, which I think you should do, or just come out with it. Having the PS5 out there would do wonders for the morale. Even Microsoft, they had enough sense to understand that, man, look, we're coming out with it this year. We need to have something tangible somebody can grab and look at, even if it's just a prototype. But I digress. But really, everything that he talked about, I like the fact that they're not going into a deep dive, unlike what it says, because that was one of the things I was scared of, is that, I was scared that they was going to go into a deep dive and get so technical, which they did, but I'm glad they didn't do it. I want to mention one last thing about, man, this is gonna be like 30 minutes, I know, because I'm not gonna do any editing to this. I'm gonna wrap this up and upload it. So I'm not gonna do any editing to it, man, because I'm wanting to get something up, but I don't want to spend 5 hours editing this. All right, so another thing that I thought that was a mistake that Sony did was, talk about the audio capabilities. Don't get me wrong. I think audio has its place. They should have called maybe Audioholics, but maybe my man Youth Man, to really talk about those things and how they can relate to certain speakers. I know the Legends is out for Poke. Poke got the Legends out. That'd be a nice speaker for that, since it's just a 2-channel, but they're able to augment the sounds and stuff like that. And I'm very much into audio. I got some audio stuff that I'm about to upload too, but I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm into audio tech, so you're gonna get a lot of audio on this channel. So I love audio, man, and I love talking about audio, but I just don't think it really had a place here in this meeting. Now, again, the problem that is probably the overall problem is that this was open to the public. And so I think that was a mistake too. This should have been behind closed doors. It shouldn't have been premiered. It should have been just clips of him talking about some of the situations, because I just think that this opened up Sony to a lot of criticism, having him come out here. And I know that's we've already went down that road, but honestly, having him come out here and making this public, Mark Cerny doesn't make Sony better in that way. That's not his. That should not be his role. I'm just being honest with you. That doesn't make Mark Cerny look better. That doesn't make Sony look better, having Mark Cerny out there. So, yeah, I can't say enough about that. I wish they didn't do that, because that really opens up Sony to a lot of criticism and a lot of derision. I like Sony, man, and I like both companies. I hate when both companies, Microsoft and Sony, look bad like this. This makes Sony. With all Phil Spencer's marketing and T-flops and all that other stuff, I'm going to tell you something. He's a showman. He's a showman. He can come out there and make a show and break it down to make sense for the average person. So it's very important to have a guy like that. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not qualified to do that. I'm barely qualified to do this. I do this to get better so I can be a better speaker. I don't do this for, if I can get subscribers, that's great. But I like playing games, and I'm trying to get better at public speaking. So this is good practice for me. But in his situation, in my opinion, he should just have his own channel and just do it like that, or like he doesn't need to be representing Sony in this matter. Like this is kind of a travesty that they have him out here. And I respect Mark Cerny a lot, but they don't need him out here. Okay, I'm done beating that horse. All right. So let's talk about some of the good stuff. So, the good thing is that, the PS5 looks more like a gaming machine than the Xbox Series X. And the reason why I say that is because it's my thought. This is my thought, but I don't think that ray tracing is going to stand the test of time. Now, if they get it looking like those demos and those conceptual photos and those demonstrations and stuff like that, I think that it has a future. But I mean, I don't want to play a game that's got ray tracing and it's going 30 frames per second. I was going 40. I just don't think that people's going to turn that on. Like if you give people a choice between playing a game 60 frames per second and having ray tracing, I'm here to tell you they're going to turn that stuff off, especially when they start seeing the smooth and the butterness of 60 frames per second. I just don't think ray tracing at this point in time looks better than a 60 frames smooth 60 frames per second game. And God help you if you can get it up to 100 frames per second. I mean, that'd be awesome. But I just don't believe that ray tracing looks better than 60 frames per second. I think 60 frames per second is very, very easy on the eyes, and responsiveness is a key pivotal factor in video gaming. It trumps everything. And to me, the PS5 is kind of going the same direction as the PS4 Pro. In multiple games, the PS4 Pro outperforms the Xbox One X in sending frames to the frame buffer and the frame rate. And you can see that in multiple games. I mean, now, can you actually see it? Who knows? But, computational wise, when you do the analysis on it, you run it through an analysis program, the PS4 Pro, more times than not, outperforms the Xbox One X in frame rate. And I think that's important because I think frame rate, even if you can't see it or not, it's the nuance, of being able to get to the next level. Like y'all see me play multiple games and I'll be like, man, I know I jumped. But because what I'm seeing is not what the game is seeing, right? So there's a delay between my TV and myself, and there's a delay with the actual throughput of the graphics. So all of that slowed down. You get a situation like you see all the time when I do my gameplays. I mean, you see me and I say, man, I know I jumped, but I may have jumped, but because I got delayed, even with the television, all of that stuff, it adds up. All of those post-processing effects, that stuff is, have interrupts, and even if you press, okay, you might have pressed it, but you're behind as far as the game system is concerned. So increasing the throughput, basically engineering it to have a high bandwidth from disk to screen is very important for a console, especially when you got third-party developers kind of looking at it and they're trying to figure out which system is going to sell the most? Well, of course, or which system is easier to develop on, because the fact of the matter is a system like the Xbox Series S, they're in a dangerous position because architecturally they're quite different from the PS5. What if the PS5 start getting a whole bunch of third-party developers and then all your games are ported? That means that trust me, developers are in crunch time. They're not going to spend a whole lot of time messing with DX, trying to use all those CUs. And I think PlayStation got 48 CUs, and like the Xbox One S got 56. I think that's what I'm counting. But anyway, the point is that I just don't believe that the developers are going to be trying to use those extra. I know that because that's what happened with the PlayStation 3 when the Xbox 360 was not as quite as powerful, but they had a narrow application and a narrower throughput, and they was able to build games. Even though the PlayStation had all these SPUs, they wasn't utilizing that. They was first of all trying to overcome printing to the screen first of all, and then secondly, they wasn't going to use the rest of those SPUs because, man, you have to, develop the API to. They didn't have an API. That was the whole thing. The PlayStation 2 didn't even have an API. Developers had to build their own API. I think Mark Cerny built the API for the Uncharted, the first Drake Fortune one. Yeah, Mark Cerny developed that API. That's why games started looking better. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that people are not going to be fussing around and trying to figure out the DX12 or whatever it is, DX11, DX12. They're not going to be trying to do all of that. They in crunch time. They're going to try to get their games out. And if they're developing for the PS5 and the PS5 is easier to develop for, and they port it to the Xbox Series X, and you guys decided to make a totally different architecture, I don't know, that can be kind of fatal. So we'll see with that. They could probably have all the kinks out of it at that time or later on down the line, but it's just something to think about. But really, my thoughts on the PS5, the ball is in. I don't see how Sony loses this generation. I don't even see how Xbox, and this ain't an Xbox bashing video, but I don't see how Microsoft can compete with them at all. They don't even have no Xbox Series X games out for a couple of years. All the stuff that you're going to be playing is for the Xbox One X and the Xbox One. So I don't understand. I just don't get it. I just don't get it. I don't understand. I'm thinking maybe some third parties might come out with some titles for the Xbox Series X, and that's all fine and dandy, but man, I don't see those titles looking that different to where, especially if it's a higher price. I don't know where they're going to price it at. That's probably another thing that I would like to see in the next intervention of the PS5 is having a price tag on that system, knowing what it looks like and a price tag. I think those are two big important things. And Sony, I would try to make that happen in the next press event. This is Al from Transformational Gaming, and yep, we over 30 minutes, but it's going up. It's going up. It's going up. I'm not going to touch it. It's going up. Comment, like, subscribe.